Coming up on That's a Great Point. What can I have? What's available to me versus what the hell do I actually want to be doing?
Yeah, it's almost like what you believe you're capable of and what's actually possible. And if you have any sort of self-worth or self-trust or, struggle with courage or fear actually stopping you, then what you think you can have is vastly different than what's actually possible.
I love that. I love that because it's the difference between dreaming within a box that was handed to us. Like,
Mm.
here's your container. You can dream within the confines of this box versus putting the box aside and really opening up to all. What are the possibilities?
Hello, everybody. Today we are talking about what do you want to be if you grow up? I don't know about you, but I'm not too keen on growing up too quick. It's not as much fun. We're talking about making a better career choice for you and how to make better career pivots. We're talking about how emotions are just information and how to become less emotionally reactive. And the big topic today, do you allow yourself to dream for what you really truly want in your life? Or are you just thinking about what you think you could have? Kind of a big discussion. So, join us today on episode number 2 of That's a Great Point. Enjoy. Welcome to That's a Great Point, the attitude adjustment for your soul, where co-hosts Alina Doran, Michelle Aalbers, and Lee Smart discuss deep topics around a life well lived. Let's start the show. Okay, you're on the spot. Everybody get real tense.
I'm clenching hard. I am the clenching has started for me.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Oh boy. How is everybody? I'm appreciating Lee's freshly washed hair, Michelle. Right?
Yes.
It's like that fresh out of the shower look
Yeah.
for us and the audience, whoever's going to be the lucky viewer.
Viewers, plural. Let's
Uh,
make it plural.
That's the cool thing about Zoom, though, is there's been many meetings that we've had that you had no idea I didn't take a shower beforehand.
That's right. That's right. What did they say? Thank goodness there's no smell-o-vision.
That's it. That's it. So, Alina, you brought up the big question yesterday of what do you want to do when you grow up?
I think that was you.
Yeah, that was my words.
I had a different question.
You said
I do.
career pivot. So since you
Yeah.
brought the topic in, how about take it away and lead her off and
Yeah. So when we start out, wherever we start out from on our professional journey, oftentimes we're told, like, this is it, choose wisely. And there's often a feeling of this like long-term commitment. Like, I've got to choose at the, ripe old age of whatever it is, early 20s, teens, mid 20s, whatever it is. Like, I've got to make the best choice because this is it. And there's a feeling of like stuckness and like lifelong commitment. And what often happens to so many people is you get in to the working world, you learn about yourself, as that's life, and you discover that maybe the path that you're on is not at all the right path, is maybe an estuary running parallel to the path, is maybe like really close but not quite, or like on another planet. So, and especially in a time of so much change, I think that's all the time with economic uncertainty, with upheavals around the world, there are pivots and changes happening all the time. And adaptability when it comes to career is what's been top of mind. I've been having a lot of conversations on that topic. And so I think it's a helpful one to continue discussions on. Like, what is it? How do we go about it? How do we know if it's for us? Is it a remedy or is it a deflection? Those are some initial thoughts. I'm going to let it percolate in the atmosphere.
Yeah, I've got 100,000 things popping up for me. And what you start off with is like, we have to choose in advance what the right thing is. Before we even get started, that's kind of like the concept that is pushed on us from early age. You have to decide what it is you want to do before you even get the opportunity to do that thing.
Yeah.
And now you have to predict the future.
Yes.
And now with that, the future predictions abilities that we have as humans, now we're going to make sure we have the exact right thing for us, and we're going to do that. And it just doesn't work that way. Like, our whole system is so ass backwards, in my own opinion, in that why on earth would we choose to do a thing that we've never done before? We have no clue what kind of work we're actually doing. We have no idea who we are, what we're good at, what we suck at, what we care about, what our values are. None of those things. We're going in 100% blind, and we have to go in and commit to something that way. That's lunacy, if you ask me.
It is, and it's lunacy of a reality, right? Of having to choose colleges. So a child could still be in high school. At that early of an age, we're choosing a college depending on what the specialties are and what the child wants to study. Then you have to commit to a major by year 2. Like, you're not old enough to drink, but you're old enough to figure out what you want to do until you retire. And I think there's more adaptability or expectations of changes now than like 20 years ago, like prior generations, where it really needed to be a commitment. I think today there's way less of a stigma and much more acceptable that you can't have this magic 8-ball, like predict everything that's going to happen and who you're going to want to be. But I know, sorry, one thing I was going to say, and then I really want to hear, Michelle, what you're going to say is, I know that what the 3 of us share is that the 3 of us have changed careers, like, more than once. So clearly, Michelle, you're gonna.
Heck, I've changed careers within the career that I have, just in restructuring and vibing it all. I was just gonna say, I find it really interesting, and maybe it's fair to say sad, that like other people's opinions of what they think we should do and who they think we should be start really, really young, like before our prefrontal cortex is even fully developed. We got people in our world who love us, who want what's best for us, who dictate our hopes, our dreams, our goals. And we haven't even had a chance to play and explore of who and what that might be yet. And so we come into like these decisions almost, maybe this isn't fair, but like pre-programmed, because we want to show up in a way to be loved and seen and make, quote unquote, the people who love us proud, right? And so I just think it's fascinating how early, I don't know for you guys, but I just feel like that started really early, from literally everyone in my family and close outside of my family all thought they had something to say about what I was good at, what I should do, how I should show up, where I should take myself, what I should and shouldn't do, where I should and shouldn't go. You must go to college. You must do this. Don't you dare do that. It's like, wait, what? What if I just get to like hang on and take a breath and see who I might be?
It saddens me how many parents out there live vicariously through their children. They have their own regrets. And because they have those regrets, they don't want their kids to suffer those regrets. So it's like, I'm going to push you into you're going to go do the thing that I have the regrets for.
And with the assumption that that's going to make you so happy.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to be so great for you. It's like, well, it might have been really great had you done it. But for me, that doesn't feel like happy. That feels like a whole different thing. And I don't think parents do it with like, ill intent or anything like that, but that still doesn't make it feel great. And it doesn't give us the freedom to explore, where might we land if we got to choose it, or where might we land if we don't choose and we just be.
Well, that's it. We do better when we know better. And so those parents that we're talking about who are pushing and living vicariously, their intention, I believe, genuinely is, I want you to have better than I had.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where impact and intent and impact do not talk to each other or translate.
Mhm.
They don't even get to like look at each other. They just walk separate paths.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get to be friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of career pivots. It's interesting. Like I started funny enough in the old country. I started wanting to pursue a talent and a dream. And then coming to America, my understanding was, well, there is no safety net. So you have to figure it out. And the programming, the assumption I had, and it's not a bad one, is you need to be in a profession that is essentially economy proof. So whatever happens, you need to be able to get a job. Now
Mhm.
that's a consideration, right? Now I have children who are, you know, finishing middle school, in high school. So we're having those conversations. Like, what does that mean? How do you balance like a pragmatic outlook of, well, you need to be self-reliant? Because that's what I believe. You need to be able to make your way. And how do you combine that with what interests you, what lights you up to create a hypothesis? Like based on what I know of myself and the world and pay scales, compensation levels for various professions.
Mhm.
I think like that ikigai, that, the Venn diagram, the hypothesis is I'd like to pursue this and see how that goes and see how it feels and check in with myself.
You got my wheels spinning. I would just think it's so interesting that like there's so many layers to it, right? Like what if instead of focusing on what we need to do and be and finding that career path, what if we built skills like accountability and owning your life and not, running away from hard things, and like built the discernment and development of the muscle that is, I'm going to show up and face life
Mhm.
so that then I can explore what I might want to do, who I might want to be, and which career I might want to land in. Because I think we miss those skills. We pick a career to avoid all the pain from the other stuff without considering what might actually bring us joy, or what might actually like be of service to the world. I mean, if that's what we're here
Mhm.
for, which is, I mean, I actually think we're here to learn how to love ourselves, which then ripples out into the world and is in service of the world,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
I think of it as it's not binary to me. It's both. It's not one or the other.
Mhm.
It's absolutely learn about accountability and who you really are all throughout. I mean, hopefully all throughout childhood too.
Mhm.
Like what brings you joy, what impact you have on others, what impact they have on you, and the pragmatic side. That's
Well,
the
the pragmatic side is typically way over indexed in that people lean into the safety. And there's this
well,
idea of that I'll be safe if I get the career. And more often these days, people are getting laid off and fired from corporations that are, they're just going through shifts in their organization and people get laid off and they've been trapped at a job that they hate, but it's the safe thing. Now all of a sudden it's not safe anymore.
mm,
And what is truly the safe thing is to be willing to change and go out there and do the things necessary to face those hard things like Michelle was talking about, right?
yeah,
That's the greatest skills that we can have is the ability to adapt and to change
absolutely.
and to go outside of that safety zone and lean into discomfort. Those skills. Like if you take somebody who's really, really good at selling and marketing themselves, that's the greatest survival skill we can have in this day and age. Because you can find something anywhere if you're very good at selling and marketing. putting yourself out there, right? That's the true way to be safe. Scary though, isn't it?
Of course. Well, looking fear in the eyes, right? Looking ourselves in the eyes and doing it scared with faith,
Mm.
faith, conviction in ourselves
Yeah.
that it will work out in our highest good.
Yeah. And
Just
my
thinking about
question is, yeah,
go
if you
ahead.
could fail at something that you don't like to do because there is no true safety, why on earth wouldn't you go do something that you absolutely love doing?
Yeah. But I'm just thinking about the pivot aspect of all of this,
Mm,
right? Like some pivots are forced. When you lose your job, you lose your
Mm.
safety. That's a forced pivot. You don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other times where like the people who are stuck in the doldrums where their soul is dying a little every day in a job that's just sucking the life out of them.
sure.
And they don't have the like, do they pivot? Or do they just stay and get a little more depressed and sad every day? Like, and if they do choose to pivot, like, what is that spark that inspires people to pivot? That's my question.
Mm,
Sometimes they're forced. I get that. But when it's not forced and when you're just like, this isn't working, but I don't know what else to do, and you don't have clarity on how to pivot, what actually is it always a forced thing? I don't believe it
no.
is, but I think some people require that.
Mm-hmm.
I think much like someone who has unhealthy eating habits, it can take like a heart attack and a
Mm,
hospitalization to push them to reflect on how they eat and what accountability they have over their health, what control they have over what's in their power. Similarly, yes, displacement, when you have like reduction in force, you have layoffs, reorganization, restructuring, and it may not lead to a pivot because at the end of that, the person may land in a very similar role somewhere else. And when I think about a pivot, I think about a change in like industry and the actual responsibility set. Um, where it feels a little bit displacing. So, I don't know, in my life where I was in a career that definitely felt misaligned with my purpose, I had a mission for years to pivot. But for me, the way my reality was and the way I saw the constrictions is I couldn't just up and leave and start brand new from scratch because a drastic career change could result often in a very steep compensation drop. And that expertise and the skill set wouldn't be valued anymore. Right. So that wasn't really realistic for me. Then another option can be to go back to school. But during that time, you're not really earning. That wouldn't have worked for me either. And so it had to be an internal gradual pivot with what I think of as half turns. Doesn't need to be a whole full turn. Can have half turns. Can have small little incremental steps, piece by piece, where you're walking closer and closer to what lights you up. I think for me, it wasn't forced. I guess the force was coming from inside of feeling like a part of me was just inactive and collecting dust and sadness that it wasn't being expressed day after day, sadness over years that it wasn't being expressed. And so I learned to be creative with that. We can express it in the current like situation exactly where we are and look for new ways.
Pull something out here that is there's this idea of dreaming about what we think we can have versus dreaming for what we truly want. I see you nodding your head down there. You know what I'm talking about, huh, Michelle?
Right.
Such a huge like shift in thinking that happens there. It's like, what can I have? What's available to me versus what the hell do I actually want to be doing?
Yeah, it's almost like what you believe you're capable of and what's actually possible. And if you have any sort of self-worth or self-trust or, struggle with courage or fear actually stopping you, then what you think you can have is vastly different than what's actually possible.
I love that. I love that because it's the difference between dreaming within a box that was handed to us. Like, here's your container. You can dream within the confines of this box, versus putting the box aside and really opening up to all. What are the possibilities? Like, box aside, maybe I'll come back to this box, but what else is there?
Not what else is there, is what do you want? Like, start with you and your own values and what it
For
is that you
me,
cherish,
yeah.
and your strengths, and what it
Yes.
is you want to be doing with your
Yes.
time.
I think that's a great way of, right. What else is there is what is here. There is in there. What else is in there that isn't being expressed? That, like, that's the box that this doesn't have to go into.
Mm-hmm.
This pointing at the brain and the head and the body. I love that. Yeah. How do you feel expressed? I mean, boy, if I had one coaching conversation when I was starting out, it would have changed the trajectory of my entire career. It would have blown my mind. It really would have changed everything.
Maybe. And maybe you probably weren't ready for that change whenever that conversation happened.
Well, when I would have acted on it, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
that would have been a incredible opening. My goodness.
I had some of those conversations early on coaching style that, I already knew it all. I already had all my answers already, so they didn't help very much. That's
You knew too much.
I mean, and that goes that way sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not ready, right? We're not ready to even see ourselves.
Sometimes we just got to get our shit kicked in the dirt enough times to make us go, oh, wait a second. Maybe I'm not quite as smart as I think I am. Maybe I should open up to a new way of thinking, some new possibilities. Maybe somebody else knows something a little bit more than I do.
Yeah, maybe like pry the horse blinders off.
Mm-hmm.
Like a touch.
Yep. So how do you know you're making the right pivot?
Do you need to know you're making the right pivot? I mean, what's right? You know what I mean? Are you making the right pivot for right now? I just feel like it's all so temporary. It's hard to, you know what I mean? I think there's many possibilities for the right pivot.
Yeah.
It could look a lot of different ways. I think similar to not putting yourself in a box or realizing you don't know it all. Like, for me, the right pivot is always, am I listening within myself and am I open to different possibilities? Because if I have my mindset on one thing that's super rigid and I refuse to hear or listen to anything else, that's usually not a great pivot. I usually I can be determined and like mindset and ready to go. But if there's not an openness that comes with that, I find I end up tripping over myself. And it's like, oh, if I would have just noticed that other little piece, this would have been so much better, or could have been so much better. I don't know. It feels like, I don't know, the right word maybe is just one of those that I feel like people can hang on and then get to expectations that are too high and make everything seem and appear and feel like a failure. It's
Yeah.
like, what's the pivot for right now? And where might that take you?
Yeah.
I've
There's a lot there.
Yeah.
So there's this idea of the heart also always has to be aligned. I always have to be passionate about it, right? And that can lead to, like, for me, I tried that for a few years and I ended up jumping from this to this to this to this to this. I had that shiny object syndrome. Oh, this is shiny. Let me go play with it. Oh, that's shiny too. Let me go play with that. And so trying to do all heart passion ends up just we flit around from thing to thing and whatever feels good in the moment. And the truth of things, when we're first learning how to do something, it sucks. We're terrible at it. And if we're always going heart passion everywhere, then
I didn't I didn't mean
that
heart passion.
yeah, I'm
I
definitely
meant,
putting my own
Yeah.
words
I
in
meant
here.
like the pause, meant from the pause that is the inner wisdom. That's that quiet space. That's like the you that that knows versus, I mean, it may not feel heartfelt or passionate, but if there's like this calm observer that I connect with that I don't really know how to explain, but it's not about like I'm following my heart and I'm following my passion. I mean, it is that because it's aligned with like the part of me that knows more than the part of me that gets in the way. Because I think if we're feeling like everything has to be sunshine, roses, and unicorns all the time, that is delusional.
Good
That
old
is not
toxic
how the world works.
positivity, huh?
Yeah,
Of course.
100%. So it's like, that's a little gross to me. But I think if we're not used to looking within and we're not used to giving ourselves a chance, like if we're just used to saying, well, what's the point? Everything is too hard for me, like those kind of, I don't know if that's exactly the right way to put it, but I think there's a way to be less attached to a specific thing and to sort of be on a ride that there might be some rapids and there might be some, there might be some rapids, there might be some twists and turns, there might be a fork in the river that we don't know about. And we're like, oh, well, let me just, if I can pause on a rock for a little while and reassess, it's like, it's in and out of the flow it's off and on of that dang roller coaster.
It's the journey that we're embarking on is whatever that new journey is and that decision is, there are going to be bumps in the road, right? Unexpected turns, and it's going to get hard.
And it doesn't make it wrong.
And it in no way makes it wrong. And so to me, that discernment lies in that alignment between the cognitive and the heart and the gut, that instinct, that physical reaction in the body when it clicks with the mind, and in this moment, this is right. And it's this conviction that lights you through. I think of it as like a lightning rod, right? Lights you through that, in this moment, this is what you're going to do. And yes, it may be hard. And that's where the acceptance of, sure, it's all included. Like there might be tears. It might be really difficult. I might not know how to do all these things and have to learn them for the first time, but it feels so right that energetically it feels great to keep going. Right. So like staying up till midnight doing work that I love, right? I think all of us can relate to that. Doing something that we love, like reading an incredible book and reading it till midnight, feels very, very different than when we had a reading assignment for a book that we had no interest in reading, and it was kind of forced. And you're like, oh God, it will never end. And then you're up late. And then what happens if you're up late reading that book that was kind of forced on you is that you end up really feeling and focusing on being tired and how much it cost you, as opposed to if it was something that you did with passion and excitement, and you're excited that what sticks with you the next day maybe is that the ending of the book, like how exciting the plot was, the experience of it. So that's where the energy changes, is that conviction between in the whole body and the brain.
So when you get the energy that says it's time to pivot, like I'm just wondering, like, what does that look like for you? Because like I'm thinking like there are moments where I've had like that feeling like I just worked out, but I didn't work out. So it's like that excitement, that fear, that like, holy shit, like my heart is racing. I might be a little bit sweaty. I'm thinking about this thing that I'm really excited about, but I'm also super terrified of. And like, that's kind of my sign. Like I need discernment first, because I need to know if it's more about I'm afraid because it's wrong, or if it's more about I'm afraid because it's right, quote unquote. Don't like those words, but I don't know how else to say it. Right. And then if it is that I'm terrified and excited because it's like where I want to go or where I think it feels aligned, what are my next steps then? Because I can't live in that state where I feel like I just worked out all the time. Like there has to be some like, who's going to support this? Who can, like, because I don't think we're meant to do things all by ourselves. I think having support and leaning into coaches and friends and family and some, earth angel that showed up on the sidewalk where you're just like, whoa, where did you come from? You just said like the perfect thing to me today that made me decide I'm going to do this thing. Like, what does it look like when you know it's time to pivot, but like, pivots are rarely easy.
There's a cognitive bias that we're more afraid of losing than we are of chasing what we actually want. And I know there's been many times in my uh different careers that I had that gut instinct, that voice in the back of my head that said, if you stay here, things are going to go bad. Or if you keep doing like you're doing, something's going to break. And that voice would pop up, but I would have no logical reason to go along with it. So then I would just ignore it and I would continue looking for the logical reasons. The logical reasons had to be there before I made the jump. And guess what? They always showed up. But then if I waited for those logical reasons to show up, it would be months or even years later, especially whenever it's something that we're very, very, very invested in, like my first business. Because that first business was the dream. Like, this is the thing that's going to give me everything I want in my life. And after a few years, it was absolutely sucking the life out of me. But I was hanging on so bad to that. This is the thing that's going to get me where I want to go. I can't let go of this. But that voice kept telling me, dude, if you keep going like this, it's going to go bad. And sure enough, I waited and waited and waited until it actually did go bad and ended up in the hospital. Burn out so bad that I'm still, it's 6 years later, I still suffer symptoms from that burnout. It's
I
rough.
just wonder about dreams and how, as humans, like what I feel like sometimes we put our dreams out there and then we forget to let them evolve with us.
Mhm.
You
That's
know?
beautiful.
Yep.
Like we put them out there and we get so locked into the box that they're in that we forget that it's like, yeah, but we nourished ourselves to Hulk out of this box. Like, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
All
So how
life's
do
an
you
experiment.
know?
Mm.
Of course. So how do you know? I mean,
You
you
don't.
know, in the right to how do you know? That's always the question is, and it can't be a sustained level of, excitement, because that is going to exhaust you. It's like hysteria, borderline hysteria. So there has to be something that sustains you. And I don't know that it's one thing. I think it's a combination of things, and everyone's recipe will be a little bit different. But yes, a support system is really important. And for some of us who have trouble asking for help or recognizing that we need others,
Are you
I don't know
talking to
anyone
talking to
like
me?
that. I know no one. I've heard of these people. I've heard they exist. I don't know. They're somewhere. That apparently, allegedly, supposedly, people need people. I'm just saying. So a support system, whether it is a coach or it is a friend or and a group of friends and a group of others maybe going through a similar experience, to help sustain and nourish during those times of, right, the down times. So I think during the ups, what needs to be done can be very clear. And then part of that whole journey can be the downs, where it can become disorienting. But what do I do next? Where am I again? And sometimes you need to be reminded of who you are. And sometimes it's lovely when others remind you who you are, because you're not always there to remind yourself. Yeah. So people need people. It's like headline. This just in.
Yeah, people need people. I just, as you were talking, I was thinking about over the course of my life, there have been things that I have been absolutely convinced of that there was no chance that they were not true. And then it turns out they were not true over time as I grew and learned more and more and experienced more in life. And so now I'm in this place of I recognize, understand, and accept that I could be wrong and likely am wrong about many, 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 if not most, if not all things that I believe today. And the only way I can show up to best navigate that is to use my discernment, to listen to that calm observer within. And if it feels true today in the now, I will go ahead and accept it to be quote unquote my truth, with the understanding that tomorrow, the next day, the next year, it might not be my truth anymore, that I get to explore and dance and change my mind as I live this life that I'm blessed to have and to navigate. And I just think I really started my life in a place where it was like, yeah, no, this is 100% true. And no one can convince me otherwise. No one can tell me that I'm wrong because I know I'm right, and I'm just like, I could be wrong about all the freaking things. And the beauty is I get to find out or
You
not.
sound like you were speaking to me from my middle daughter's voice there for a second.
Don't tell me I'm wrong, Dad. You don't know what I know.
Uh-huh.
You're looking for
I
answers.
I
You know where
know
to
this to be the truth, and there is absolutely nothing that will sway me from my belief.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the what ifs. I like the what if. What if it wasn't true? Then what? What if it's just possible that it wasn't true?
You know,
I think that used to give me anxiety, and now I'm like, ooh, that's kind of fun. Where do we go with that?
it drives me nuts when I see all my best qualities pop out of my kids. So, kid, I had to learn this the hard way. Please, can you
Yeah.
please just take my advice on this one that you don't know? Yeah. Oh man, I swear if I had a bucket for every strongly held belief that I had
Oh
growing
gosh.
up that ended up costing me.
Yeah. It's like a faulty foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Mm, yeah.
That's why it's so helpful to have a set of value systems that are slightly more vague.
Mm.
I'm actually going to cover this with my accountability group tonight, allies,
Mm.
and how these allies are a way to easily subconsciously recall what it is that we value most in our life and apply it right then and there. So it's like this shortcut method to what do I value? How do I want those values to show up? So we have these different allies. They could be whatever, right? You could be, it could be a person that you have known for real, or a historical figure, or a fictional character, a mythological creature, whatever. For instance, one of my favorite allies is this guitarist named Dimebag Darrell. It's his guitar back here on the wall. Every time I look at that thing, I think about my value in being very, very good at what I do, and yet not taking it so seriously.
Mm.
Go out there and do what you're good at. That's every time I look at that guitar, that's what I think about. Is go out there and do what you're good at and have fun doing it.
And do it humbly.
Mm.
He was very much so a humble man. Um, like always when the fans would show up, he would stop whatever he's doing and it's party time. Let's go hang out with the fans. What an amazing thing to keep in mind. So every time I look, all I have to do is look at my screen right there. And now I'm reminded, have fun and be great doing it.
Mm.
Do y'all have any allies you can think of right off the top of your head and what they mean to you?
Mine right now in the now with everything I've been doing, mine are all spirit guides. We won't go there. They're amazing.
Mm.
Okay.
I have a collection of people and of characters and they evolve.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're earlier versions of like my childhood me,
I love that.
who's
Mhm.
in the room with me. And I am showing her things and walking her through my
Mhm.
life. And we're sitting at the decision table together. It's like, well, what do we do with this? What shall we do about this?
I love
I
the
do hear the
childhood
voices.
version.
Oh, sorry.
The
What'd you
childhood
say?
version can bring back that innocent lack of concern in from my point of view. What else is there whenever you start to think about your child?
Yeah, there's an innocence, there's this joy, a desire for joy, a desire for peace, kindness. There's an innocence. It's like, well, why would anybody do a bad thing? Of sort of assuming the best.
Mhm.
That's what comes through for me. I also think about the perspective. I think about the perspective of an eagle.
Hmm.
So sort of gliding, like very sharp eye and seeing the detail and the nuances, but gliding over and seeing the whole landscape at once. It was very smooth, very in control, very calm, like in charge, keeping you safe. I think about the eagle as well amongst the team.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are like the asshole speaking through, like the five animals. Like, well, don't forget about us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, you guys are here. Don't worry.
Well, it's funny that I'm glad you brought that, because our saboteurs, kind of what you're hinting at is
Mhm.
the misguided helpers.
Yeah.
And whenever we accept our saboteurs and bring them in and thank them for being those helpers, those misguided helpers, the protectors, now all of a sudden those saboteurs can be an ally as well, because they do absolutely will have our best interests at heart. They just over-index.
They
Like
wish us well.
yeah,
They
for
do. They
instance, my saboteur is my inner adolescent. That's the piece of me that goes, this is stupid. This
Yeah.
is boring. I don't want to do this. This isn't fun. Yeah, how far do we get as an adult before only doing what's fun? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Gotta honor that adolescent too.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's a highly creative place to come from, right? If I let that inner adolescent run whenever I'm doing some of my work, like my creative work, the writing or the making music or whatever, holy moly, some pretty awesome stuff can pop out of that. But if he's always running the show, then look
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. He needs some boundaries, right?
Mhm.
That's an adolescent who needs some boundaries. Young man. Yeah. Yeah. They can get along, or they can be asked to sit in the waiting room for a little bit. Like, listen, you're doing something, love you, know you want to protect me. I know you're here for my highest good. I'm going to need you to take a seat over there. There's a blanket, pillow, chill. You'll be back in the room in a little bit. Just not yet.
Mhm.
I think the reason they were rebelling too, like no longer exists in the same way, to just remind that. Like I literally just had this conversation yesterday with someone. We were talking about, the inner adolescent coming forward and just running the show. It's like, do you want your inner adolescent running the show? I feel like you're saying that you don't, but you don't have boundaries to make sure that it won't. So what does that look like? And sometimes I think it's like just reframing, like reminding of present day, like the reasons to rebel aren't there in the same way. So like even the adolescent can show up differently.
Yes.
Because the you now is actually holding space for the adolescent that once was, which
Yep.
is really powerful. Because our inner adolescents, like you said, Lee, they're creative and clever and have a lot of energy and gumption and stuff. That's
And
great.
fight like hell too. And the harder you try and push them down, the harder
Yeah.
they fight.
Yeah.
As
But to
soon
like
as you say, hey,
witness,
look, I see
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you
You
being
just,
here.
exactly.
And your turn's coming. Hang on.
Yeah.
Right? They just like,
I love
oh,
it.
okay. Oh, you
We've
hadn't
learned a
forgot
few
about
things
me?
over the
Oh,
years.
like they want to be heard, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as you acknowledge them, they're like, oh wait, I can sit back and relax for a little bit. I don't have to keep fighting for
Mm.
control.
This I'm reminded of a movie I just watched with my daughter over the weekend called Inside Out 2. And it is
I'm looking
such a
forward to that one.
great, what's that?
I'm looking forward to that one.
It's a good one. And it's great fodder for coaching
I
conversations.
bet.
It is fantastic. What's interesting about Inside Out 2 is that new emotions are introduced because the main character is now a teenager going through puberty. So you have more characters in the room and there's a power struggle. And I won't spoil the ending, but it's very much I can't wait. We should have an Inside Out right? Inside Out 2 conversation about I'm really curious about it.
That actually sounds like fun. We can
Yeah.
all watch the movie and then have a conversation about it. We can hop on that bandwagon, get a little bit extra publicity just off of their publicity. And I like the way you think.
I wasn't thinking publicity. I was thinking this is like, as I was watching this, and it's like, oh my God, anxiety enters the room
Mm-hmm.
and jealousy enters the room, and you're like,
Yep.
and embarrassment enters the room, and and then nostalgia enters at some point, and everyone says it's not your time yet. You have another 10 years. Leave. It's awesome. So we can't wait till we all see it and talk about it. It's just fun. As
Cool.
I was watching this, I was thinking I need to talk to Lee and Michelle about this.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So if we pivot back to pivoting,
pivot to pivots.
we start to bring in allies and saboteurs to the conversation. What pops out whenever we start to think about pivoting? Let's top of mind here.
I just think it's required.
What's
If you
required?
never pivoting, if you never pivot ever, if you try, if you're so hung up on staying exactly where you are, or like we were talking about dreams earlier, hanging on to that dream so hard that there's no pivot possible, how much pain does that cause?
Well, when I think about pivot to, I think that the agility versus pivoting, they're intertwined and there's a relationship. I guess an association that I have when I think about a flexible path of an expectation that of course you will evolve and of course your dreams will evolve. You're a human being. You're not who you are at 20 as you are at 50, or right, you may have different desires.
Thank
God. So that's that agility, that fluidity is it to me, it has a different feeling, different quality than pivoting. Pivoting to me is a change in plan. So if the plan includes fluidity, you're just rolling down the river and it's all evolving and it's all emerging. If you're committed to a road and you're making a conscious decision to take a different fork in the road, that's what I more associate with pivoting. So there's a bit of a more rigid quality to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the first place I think about it is in career pivots. Certainly applicable anywhere because it's all included. It's all part of us. But I think about that intentionality and a decision that's made that changes. Like we were on Route 9. We're going to make an exit. We're going to get on a different route. The program is changing. And when we know when it's time. And that's what I was curious about to talk about here is, when do we know that a pivot is called for? What's the discernment? How does one discern between when it's something that we're running away from versus something that we're choosing out of alignment?
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
Yeah, no, that's a really big question I was wanting to chew on for just a second.
We chew slowly for better digestion.
That's right. That's what she said. I'm thinking about emotional reactivity versus making a sound logical decision. Like that's popping up. And there's the idea of, am I running from something or am I running to something?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are the motivating factors? Is what I'm running to more likely to help me express what I value most? Like, is it coming from ambition? Or I'm thinking about specifically what happens whenever you get somebody that's very good at their job, like car salesman. Got a car salesman is very good at selling, and they become the number one seller. And then the dealership's like, I want to give you a promotion. Let's move you up to manager. And now instead of selling, they're managing everybody underneath them, which
Mhm.
requires a completely different set of skills. And they may not have those skills. They may be absolutely terrible at it, which happens a lot. So it's the idea of, am I doing it just because it's expected? Like, oh, promotion equals good. Or am I doing it because I want to learn how to be a leader? I want to learn how to be a manager because I want to serve people under me and help them become better at what they're doing.
Mhm.
Am I doing it because it's the expected thing for me to do? Like, I've been
Mhm.
told I need to do this. Or am I doing it because I truly, really want to be that manager? Because if I teach people under me the skills that I have managed to learn to be a great salesman, now all of a sudden I'm not just doing it for me. I'm helping all these other people underneath me become better people at what they're doing. And now I'm improving all of their lives.
Mhm.
Big
Right.
difference. Big difference between I'm doing it because I want a promotion, I want that extra status, or am I doing it because I really truly want to do this job because I think I'd be great at this job.
Mhm. Yeah. And in the similar vein, the choice, right, the optics of the choice. Taking a promotion externally looks great, right? Generally, conventional wisdom says promotion good.
Mhm.
If someone in that situation chose to stay in their role because they love the art of selling, they love what they do and it feels great. They serve where they are and they want to go deeper and serve better and better and be the master of selling at firsthand selling, not teaching others and raising other salesmen up, but doing it themselves. And they love it. And it makes them happy. They say, you know what? No, I appreciate the promotion proposal, but I want to stay where I am. So the optics can look very different, right? Or that skill set, understanding that that next step requires skills that the person may not possess today. They can choose to stay where they are because they're scared to learn the new skills and they don't want to fail. So the optics of the choice may or may not inform us. It may not tell us anything about if this decision was aligned or thoughtful or just purely reacting to something, right? Running from, running to, just running, escaping, deflecting
Mhm.
versus an aligned decision.
Doing what's expected, doing what I'm told,
Mhm.
is the
Yeah.
inner authority running the show? Or is it all the messaging that I've received up to this point in my life that what I should be doing?
I'm thinking about this old game show, Family Feud, and like survey says, 100 people said that you're going to do what you're doing. Good job. Always taking surveys of what others will think.
I think, when we're thinking about pivot and what it looks like, how do you discern and decide a pivot when it comes? That's kind of where you started with the question. If I think about it, it's like if a pivot's forced upon you, can you make a hasty pivot? Sure, I've made hasty pivots and sometimes I get lucky and they work out. But for the most part, if I'm making a pivot of any kind, even if it's forced upon me suddenly, for me, there has to be time. I feel like I start with information gathering. Like I want to talk to people, see what they think. I want to, because that helps me get to what I think. But then I have to take some time and sit and ask myself, like the whys, like, why am I coming to this decision for me? Because if I'm taking information from outsiders who may have my best interest at heart, but no one knows the whole picture except me, I'm the only one who knows the entire picture of all of this pivot. No one else does. And as much as possible, obviously, I don't know the entire picture either. That's never a thing. But if I don't take a moment to consider, okay, I'm really aligned with what this person said. Is it because I care more about what they think of me and I want to make them happy? Am I falling into my old pattern of wanting to make the people that love me proud? Or is it because I actually believe I have a skill set here that would really, enhance the thing and my life? Or do I believe I'm supposed to build a new skill that is really close to what I do, but it's aligned? Like, I just think there's so many layers. I start with information gathering, then I get quiet and I have to call myself on my bullshit and I have to be accountable and I have to recognize and remember my patterns of how I show up so that I know I'm showing up for my best and highest good, and not in an old wound, or not in a story that I'm telling myself that I can or cannot do some sort of a thing. I'm a big information gatherer. I have to talk to other people. It's one of the ways I move my own energy and get clarity for myself. But because I have to talk to other people, I have to be really careful that I'm not then also attaching my decision to what they're going to think of me or why they might be proud of me. That's a really hard thing to do. That's like a muscle that it has been building for me over 2 decades. And I still don't feel like I have it mastered, but I'm a heck of a lot more aware of it. And I put way more intention around that. And I still get it wrong every now and again. But it's so interesting how, like, pivots, I've made some hasty pivots and they've worked out, but that's not really the way I prefer to do it anymore.
A lot to chew on. There's a lot to chew on. I think about some of the decisions that I've made that have felt so right. Again, struggle and skill building and bumps in the road included. A quality of ease has been there for me. Like, it just oftentimes, I can't say it's every time. Oftentimes it's just, there's an ease where it's just elegantly appeared. The opportunity elegantly appeared in my life, just slid right in. And there's an elegant sequence of discussions, conversations that feel easy. There's an ease and flow and elegance of how it comes to be, that it just happens. And it just like slid right in. And there's this realization
wait,
of,
I thought the work had to be hard for it to be worth it.
Right. Exactly. That's what I was about to say. There's a realization that, it doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be difficult. And it doesn't have to be difficult every time. It can actually be easy. That decision of, is it for me, can be easy. So that to me is one of the signs. Was this, it just kind of magically, the universe sort of comes together. It's like waves, like lapping and kind of taking you to the shore gently.
You better be careful. Somebody's going to end up thinking you're a Buddhist at some point.
I will take wisdom from any and every faith and system of beliefs. That is my religious view, is if it's a belief that is going to be a positive in my life and make my life better, I will use it. So
I like to plug and play depending on what I'm feeling in the moment.
like cosplay, like Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Flow, ease is an indicator.
Certainly.
Hearing voices.
I love.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm weaving in
go
what
ahead.
you were just. No, please. Well, that's a good point.
Well, I was just gonna say, I love that ease is absolutely an indicator, and so is fear.
Yes.
Like, both can be true, one or the other can be true, and that's where all the discernment comes in. It's like, you have to be willing to look. If you're not willing to look, then it's, quote unquote, just a hasty decision or a hasty choice,
Yeah.
But when we look, like, is it easy? Or is this harder than it has to be? Is that trying to tell me something? Is this fear from a good place? Is it from a place that's like actually a warning from my spirit guides, like, or from my highest self? It's like, you got to look, and you got to have time to allow yourself time. And to be fair, time is like relative to and personal here. Some people need a lot of time and some people need a split second, but they need time to look and decide.
To look and see. That's right. And sometimes that decision, I find, can be immediate, like almost immediate. It just feels right in the moment. It all clicks. I don't need to talk to any additional people. I don't need to think.
Yeah.
I'll
let Buddha take me to the shore and ride the waves. I'm in.
It's good. I'm here. I've arrived. I'm here. Yes, take me there, please. Thank you. And sometimes it's like wading through the waters and feeling it out. feeling into.
I'm reminded of
something-
a quote in that the right conversation in the wrong mood is the wrong conversation. And that holds for decisions too. Like if we're making our decisions out of a place of less than, desperation, lack, anger, whatever those things are, typically those are going to be the wrong decisions.
Mm,
If they're
amen to that.
right.
Certainly not clear
Yes.
decisions. You might
Yeah.
get lucky. It might end up being one of those lucky, hasty decisions, but it won't be made mindfully from awareness and that clarity.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Like a place of curiosity. There's room for curiosity.
And
Like,
play.
what's here? And play.
Yep. Yeah. That's a clear indicator for me that I know I'm doing the wrong thing is if my inner adolescent shows up and I'm making a decision with my middle finger held high. So you know what? You could just take and shove it.
I'm just like, for me, that's always, spite. Hello, welcome, my dear friend.
And that's how I know I'm not exactly making the right decision in the right moment.
Hmm.
To sit and let that process for a little while and go, okay, what's a better way to handle this than going out with fingers held high and burning all the bridges? I mean, obviously that emotion is very valid. It's data. And it doesn't need to be what controls the decision in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea that our inner selves, right? Our inner adolescent, our inner child, our inner anybody that's not today is data. It's just it's just
Yes.
information. It doesn't have
Yes.
to be this huge attachment to like, oh, I'm feeling this kind of way. That must mean this is deeper than I thought. It's like, no, they just came forward and it's information that they came forward. So that tells you something.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be like, I think we sometimes want to suck it down into this deep, dark hole of like this deep healing that needs to happen because we haven't done it. And it's like, yeah, or they're just still present and they're here to serve you and a big dish of information that can help
Mhm.
you get to where it is that you
Mhm.
actually are meant to go, want to go, desire to go.
Mm. I think they're also yes to everything. And I think there's also a like a bias in like neural pathways that are built over years and years and years of compartmentalizing certain feelings. Like, oh, this one goes in this box. You know, fear, you go in that gray box in the corner. Anxiety, you go over here. Comparison, you go over there. That's where you guys always go. So that detachment from the boxes and putting it all out there and looking at it dispassionately and making sense of what it is, what it might be, that discernment that we keep talking about. I think that's one of the key for many of us. It's building new neural pathways and connections. Like you don't have to put that sweater in that box. That emotion doesn't need to be categorized in such way. This might not be the story that it's telling us, right? Like fear doesn't have to mean bad. Bump in the road doesn't have to mean that you're screwing up. Like abort mission, don't do it. No, that might not be the story. Might mean keep going. It's great. You just found out one way that something doesn't work. Keep going. Right.
And I don't know how you guys grew up, but like emotions, I never asked what they might be telling me. They just were. I'm in anger again. It was never like, what are you telling me? You know, so like the fact that we can do that now is such a huge, this is information. What is it here to tell me is a very different question than, oh, I'm angry and pissed off. And that's all I know. I just am.
And that's a key difference between right judging that emotion, ascribing it certain value, and noticing it showing up. It has a more meditative quality to it. Of you don't need to judge it, banish it, spank it. Right? You could just like welcome, have a seat. Let's take a look at you. Like, let me sit with you a little bit.
Yeah, tell me more.
Yeah. So it's like you're a psychotherapist to all of your parts. You're like, this is interesting.
You've been hiding for a while. Why are you showing up again?
Didn't we talk about this before?
Yeah.
Back. What do you need?
We have thoughts, we have feelings, and our tendency is to judge them. And if instead we just get curious about what they mean, we create a gap between thoughts and feelings and action. And the bigger the gap is, the more opportunity we have for choice in that gap. So we could choose what action we want to take despite whatever thoughts or emotions are popping up.
Like a liminal space. Is that what it's called? It's like creating that space so that you can.
I just want to call it the gap.
I always call it the gap, but
Yeah,
I think our gaps mean different things.
Yeah, you have to mind the gap.
That is what he said. So
I'm glad you caught it.
it's also what she said.
Oh, man.
They all said it.
I'm feeling awful smug right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. So what are the thoughts, I'm thinking of everything that we've talked about and trying to summarize it in my head,
Yep.
headlining it. When we think about pivots, what are some helpful takeaways and morsels of wisdom?
I have a few popping up right off the top of my head. One is the adaptability is the number one way to survive. And we are more safe the more adaptable we become.
Mm.
So if we really truly crave safety, if we really truly crave peace, we have to be adaptable. There is a moment for everything that we do choose that we will go through a period of suck as we are learning and taking on those skills that it takes to be good at something. So before we become good, it just kind of sucks and we have to go through it because we don't know if it's going to be good until we start to get good at it. And once we get good at it, then finally it can start to be more fun.
Mm.
So there needs to be a decision, and inside of that decision, there absolutely has to be a certain amount of time that we are going to commit to this new thing to get past the valley. I think of it like a valley. We have to trudge through the valley and the swamp and all that to get to the other side to start climbing this new mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Motivation plays a key factor in it. Like, what is our motivating factors as we move forward? Are we running from pain, or are we actually running to what we value?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's both, that's even better. I think that's what I got out of it. That, and we have to mind the gap. We have to create a gap between thoughts and feelings and action. And inside that gap is choice. And that choice means everything. Dang, y'all are
Love it.
speechless. I'm
I
feeling
love
smug
it.
again.
I love it. I love it. Thinking what else we talked about. Oh, bring all the parts in, all parts of you. Don't need to kick them out. Like, let them play, figure them out, which is really, what
That's
do
what
you
she
really,
said.
what do you, what do you, it is what she said. It is. Good job. Your hair is still wet from that morning shower. We need to take a minute to talk about that at the tail end. But I think integrating all of us, so all of the different parts of us, is, what do you really want? And what do you want right now? In this time in your life, what's going to be really important when you look back on your life? What do you want this all to mean? What is it all for? What is all of this for? And what does it feel like when you're making, what does it feel like within you? Because it might feel differently in everyone. What does it feel like within you when you are taking a step in the right direction towards that, what you truly, really want, versus away from it? How do you know? Hot, cold. How do you know you're getting warmer or you're getting colder? And then I think of strategy and serendipity. So you can have a plan. You can have ideas of how you want to go about getting there, and always leave room for serendipity. Always leave room for the magic in this world of what will come, so that you can see the opportunity and understand it as such, recognize it when you meet it. If you have your checklist and your horse blinders are screwed on too tight. So strategy and serendipity. I think of remembering the half turns, smaller incremental steps. They don't need to be outwardly dramatic steps. A small step externally can have the quality energetically of a huge step of walking toward the thing that's really important to us. Yeah.
I think the only thing that you guys didn't touch on, and you might have, because we touched on a lot of different things, but is the ask for help. And I would say ask for help and be brave enough to make your own decision for yourself. Like, asking for help doesn't mean you get to throw away your accountability. Asking for help doesn't mean you're not the one making the decision. Asking for help doesn't mean you now have a scapegoat that you get to blame because when it goes south, when it goes bad. Ask for help, find the people, have a plethora of people that can support the hard times, whether it's a pivot or a suck in, new things that are hard and challenging, or something totally different. And then ultimately remember that it's you. It comes down to you. You are going to make the best decisions for yourself.
Beautiful. That is a beautiful way to tie it all together. That reminder.
What's popping up for me here at the very end that wish we would have covered is when we have discontent, what does that discontent tell us? It's English. I'll get there. What does that discontent tell us about what we are craving, about what's missing, about what we're truly desiring when we start to think about, I'm feeling kind of unfulfilled in this moment. How do I get more fulfillment? So I want to throw that out there as a potential for next week. When we have discontent, what are we craving?
Yeah.
And how do we get more fulfilled in our lives?
So we're deep diving next week, like deep diving.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be fun.
Sweet. I love it.
I'm bringing goggles and a flashlight.
Latex bodysuit.
That is different. That's not for them.
Not me. I'm getting rid of all my skin, so there's no walls or buffers. We're just going to get right at all of it.
Sweet. All right, I'm going to press the button.
All right.
Thank you for listening to That's a Great Point with Alina Doran, Michelle Aalbers, and Lee Smart. To find out more about how we can serve you, check out our links in the show description. Thanks for playing along.